It's been a little while since I've done any post-processing tutorials, and so my workflow's kind of changed a little bit. Over time, I think that most photographers, especially most Nightscape photographers, will kind of evolve their processes as programs become more powerful, new tools are added, they learn new techniques. So I decided to use some images from a trip to the Outer Banks that I took back in June to run through my workflow start to finish, using Lightroom, Starry Landscape Stacker, and Photoshop. This first video is going to be with Lightroom and Starry Landscape Stacker, and I'll show you the process that I use to get that stacked image in and out and do some adjustments on that. And I'm going to do a second video that will just show the Photoshop processing, because there are a lot of people that aren't real comfortable with Photoshop, but they will use Lightroom. Lightroom is slider based, very easy to use. So I'm going to go through that one first and kind of run through that process. So these images were captured back in June at Cape Hatteras, and we're gonna I'm starting out in Lightroom. There's a couple of different ways to get your images in Lightroom. If you'd like for me to do a video on how to do the import, be happy to do that. Just leave a comment and I'll do a tutorial on that. But I'm going to assume that you have your images loaded into Lightroom. And so the first thing that we're going to do is choose the first image in the stack. Now I shoot stacked images for, number one, convenience. It's really easy for me to set the camera to do self-timer so that I don't have to carry around a remote trigger. I can simply trigger the shutter and it'll wait about 5 seconds and it'll start taking images, and it'll do up to 9. I shoot with a Nikon Z6 II. So I also do most of my images stacked. I don't shoot tracked. It's extra weight to carry that tracker around, so I shoot pretty much everything in stacks, and stack 9 seems to work pretty well. So that's what I'm working with here. And so I'm going to start with this first image, and I'm going to take it from the library module into the develop module. And the first issue that we have is white balance. I shoot everything in daylight white balance, and then I will correct the white balance once I take it into Lightroom. White balance is really difficult to get at night. That's why we shoot raw and just leave everything the same white balance so that all the images are uniform. I don't have a bunch of different white balances. It's really difficult to use auto white balance, so I shoot everything in daylight white balance. And so I've got this image in here, and the first thing I want to do is I'm going to switch to auto to just let Lightroom tell me what it thinks is the most optimal white balance. And that actually looks pretty good. I'm going to cool it off just a little bit. I'm going to take it down. Yeah, I'm going to cool it off just a little bit. And I'm going to add, let's see, we're at 23. I'm going to go to about 27. So yeah, I like the way that looks. The only other thing I'm going to do at this point is under detail, I'm going to remove the sharpening that Lightroom puts in there, because we're going to handle all that stuff later on. So I'm going to reduce that to 0. I'm not going to do anything with denoise here. The other thing that I'm going to do to this image initially is under lens correction, under profile, I'm going to remove chromatic aberration, but I'm not going to enable the profile corrections. When you do this, it can cause odd results when you push over to Starry Landscape Stacker, so I'm just going to leave it like it is. If you have some some issues with bow tie effect on your horizon, things like that, you can correct those once we come back to Lightroom from when we've round tripped from Starry Landscape Stacker. The other thing that I am going to do, I'm not going to remove any distortion, but I am going to go into manual, and I'm going to take out a little bit of the vignette. I'm not going to go crazy with it because it will add a lot of unnatural color in these corners, but I want to take just a little bit out so that it's not quite so bad. That's all that I want to do to this image, so I'm going to switch back to the library view, and I'm going to select all of these images in my stack, and I've actually already got these stacked in Lightroom, so they're all together. I know exactly which ones I'm going to use. I'm going to sync the settings, leave everything checked, and synchronize, and it will paste all of your corrections. It will paste everything that we've done to this image into the other 8. From here, I want to export these images, and I use a hard drive called Working that houses all of the files that I push out to do time lapse, run Starry Landscape Stacker, anything like that. So I've got it on the working hard drive in 2024. Everything there looks correct, and I'm going to call this one Road. I'm going to create a subfolder and call it Road. I'll rename it. I have a naming convention, and I'm going to put Cape Hatteras in there because that's where I am. I export everything to TIFF. And we're going to hit export. It will take the computer a few seconds to push those files out. And we're done. So now I'm going to launch Starry Landscape Stacker. It's immediately going to ask you for the images that you want to work with, and right now it's on my main image folder, or my main image drive. I'm going to switch to my working drive, 2004 Road. There we go. And I'm going to choose all 9 of these images that I just exported in TIFF format. It's going to read the images. And give me a suggestion on where it thinks that the sky and the stars are. Now, I use Starry Landscape Stacker because I am using a Mac. If you are using Windows, Sequator is the analog to Starry Landscape Stacker. I've played with it a little bit, seems to work pretty well, but again, I use Mac, so I'm using Starry Landscape Stacker here. And it's done a pretty good job, but I want to go in and make sure that the edges are well filled out. Corners, sometimes it will miss the corners because things get a little bit faint in the corners and down to the edges. And I want to make sure that I bring this all the way down. And good. And I also want to scan down here on my foreground and see if I've got any red dots down there. Sometimes it will pick them up. And I do see where I've got one down here, so I'm going to switch to erase red dots. I'm going to take that one out. I don't see anything else. So now we're going to tell it to find sky. So your blue is your mask for your sky. This looks pretty good. A nice tight mask. And the next thing that we're going to do is align and composite. Now what it is doing is it aligning the stars and running a median filter for all the stars as well as for the foreground, but it will not move your foreground. It's just going to move those stars because they will move from the time you start capturing until the time that you stop. So what we have here is a nice looking fairly crisp image. There are several different algorithms that you can use for minimum horizon noise. Minimum horizon noise with star duplication, mean horizon noise, max value, which will show you, which basically lets everything come through, and then minimum value, which gives you a darker image. I tend to like the minimum horizon noise with minimum star duplication. So once I decide which algorithm I'm going to use, I'm going to save that out. Now I switch from my working drive into my image drive. This is the drive that I store all of my images on. This is the drive they're automatically placed in when I import them in Lightroom. So it's thinking there are a lot of images in this on this folder. So, and what I want to do is, since I have used this program before, I need to make sure that I've got the right. I need to give this image a number, and it looks like I have used 6, so I'm going to give this one 7. But you can name it anything you want, but I tend to try and keep things the same so that I understand what exactly is going on. Now we can close Starry Landscape Stacker. Now the next thing that I need to do is get that stacked image back into Lightroom so I can run processing on that. I'm going to do that by coming over to the Library Navigator, and I'm going to right click on the folder that has the image that I just saved, and I want to synchronize that folder. And it's going to go in and look for any changes. There we go, it found it. So I've got one new photo, and we're going to import that photo in. It's going to take a few minutes. My computer is dragging a bit today. So there we go. I had a little hiccup. I had to restart it, pull it back up, and once it finishes synchronizing, it'll import, check for any additional metadata, and you end up with this new image. And what I always like to do, and this is personal, is I'll go ahead and pick it as flagged. I want to make sure that I flag all my edited photos so that I can quickly get back to them. So I'm going to go back into the library itself, and it'll automatically pull up, and we can see, we'll compare these two images. On the right is the original raw file with a few Lightroom edits, and on the left we can see the stacked image, and you can see there's considerably less noise in this image, especially in the foreground. So it's a much cleaner image to work with. So I'm going to go back and choose my Starry Landscape Stacker image and switch to the Develop module. Now, I essentially treat these images as two separate images in one. I process the sky different from the foreground. And to accomplish that, I'm going to use masking. I'm going to bring up masking and tell it that I want to mask the sky. And Lightroom is going to do its best to detect what it thinks is the sky. And it looks like it's done a really good job here. It's got picked up a little bit of the ground right here. But I think I'm okay with that. I think it's going to blend well. And so it looks like a good mask. So from here, I'm going to start doing some local edits. And the first one I always like to do is to bring the highlights down. You can see this is a lot of particulate and stuff in the air. We have a lot on the East Coast when we try to shoot night images. It will create scatter and come out of. And if you reduce the highlights, you can go a long way towards reducing some of that haze in the air. I won't take it all the way down, but I'll take it maybe 80–90%. And then I'm going to add some contrast back in to darken this down a bit. I'm going to bring the exposure up. And I know it seems a bit counterintuitive, but it will work out better in the long run. I'm going to add some white to bring those stars out. Shadows. Yeah, I'm going to darken the shadows down. See, I'm going to darken the shadows down just a little bit. Not messing with the temperature, color pickers, or curve at this point. I'm going to add just a little bit of texture to it. Not much. You don't want to overdo it. And just a little bit of clarity. Make it slightly crispy. And I'm going to add some dehaze to try and get rid of some of that haze that we tend to fight, especially in the South in the summertime. But I don't want to go too far. You can really go too far with this, and it makes it look wonky as all get out. So I'm going to kind of find a happy medium. Somewhere right in here looks pretty good. I like that. So now, oops, here we go. Usually when I try to make dehaze adjustments, it will hang Lightroom up, so we're going to have to give it just a minute and let it untangle itself. There we go. So now I need to deal with this foreground, and the way I'm going to do that is the same. I'm going to create a new mask, but I'm going to do it the easy way, and I am just going to duplicate and invert this mask. Looks like it's picked up a little bit of this up here, which I don't like, so I'm going to subtract using the brush tool, and I'm going to take this out. Not really sure what that's about, but we'll go with it. So I'm basically just going to repeat that process with a couple of changes. I'm going to add some exposure straight away. I may take out just a little bit of the highlights. You can see it's putting in a little bit of highlights back here, which I'm not real wild about. And I'm going to boost the shadows. You don't want to go too far. It makes it look a little bit crazy. Always keep in mind this is a night shot. You don't want to make it look like it's just daylight. You want to maintain that, or in my opinion, you want to maintain that look of nighttime. So I'm going to add a little bit of shadows, and I'm going to maybe add just a little bit of white to help pick up some of this road. Yeah, I don't think I need to do anything with that. It's going to wash it out. Maybe a little bit of contrast to give it some depth. And then again, I'm going to give it a little bit of texture, but not too much. And I'm going to add just a little bit of clarity. And I think that looks good. Can go in, yeah, that looks pretty good. Do a little pixel peeping, see if there's anything that looks weird in here. Okay. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned about is I got picking up a lot of green right here, and we may have to fix that in post. So I'm going to stop with this. This is my usual process from Lightroom, Starry Landscape Stacker, and then back to Lightroom. And we'll go in and compare these images. This is the flat original RAW with just a few Lightroom edits, and now you can see we've got a little bit better looking edited image that's been stacked, and you can really start to see the Milky Way coming out in it, some of the color in the sky. This is a very flat image. It's a raw image. That's exactly what it's going to be. And this is a Lightroom processed image from Starry Landscape Stacker. So this is an image that I wouldn't have any problems pushing out, sharing on social media. Perfectly respectable image. So if you're not comfortable with Photoshop, you could stop here and export this image and be perfectly happy with it. So I'm going to leave you there with that. And if you want to continue with the Photoshop processing, I'm going to pick that up in the next video. Hope you got something from that. If you got any questions or comments, or is there anything you'd like for me to work with, or you have any questions about why I worked with something, please feel free to leave me a comment or reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you. That'll do it for now. Thanks for watching.